catching up with Sir Martin Sorrell at Las Vegas at the Consumer Electronics Show a few weeks into the new year, 2024. Sir Martin, what is your outlook for the year 2024, and what is your outlook for the advertising industry?
I think general outlook, I would say a little bit better than last year, but not much. I mean, we've got presumably clients in the room or clients you will hear from today. And I think last year people were obviously thinking that interest rates were going to rise and they were extremely cautious. This year they're thinking interest rates are going to fall, so they're feeling a bit less cautious. But I think still cautious of what we're watching. You have to remember that almost half the world's population is going to go to the polls this year. Well, they may not all vote, because usually about 2/3 of people who can vote. There's about 4.2 billion people who are going to go to the polls. There's about 70 elections. So it's a politically very uncertain year. I think probably the most critical, well, probably the two most critical, they sort of bookend the year. You've got the Taiwanese election on the 13th, both as presidential and Congress, and really important the result there. If the DPP win both the presidential and the Congress, I think that's tough. And Taiwan doesn't feature much in people's calculus, but I do think if you read President Xi's speech, it sort of reminded me a little bit of the writings of Putin around becoming the next Peter the Great during COVID, when he was ruminating on these things apparently. So I think that's one, and then obviously towards the end of the year, the American presidential election. So I think until these events are out of the way, I don't think it's going to be full throttle. I spoke to one client last night who said to me they'd been told to move money from Q1 to Q3, and he described it as the sort of fight internally between marketing and finance. And I think that is where it is. CEOs exude tremendous confidence. CFOs who've interviewed on CNBC, or wherever it happens to be, exude tremendous confidence. But when you actually start dealing with the people, they're frightened. Not frightened, that's too strong. They're concerned about making a mistake. So I think generally that. So, and then the geopolitical uncertainty is huge. I mean, I'm 78. I can't remember a year where it's been so tough. Now, Fabrizio Caro wrote the CNN editorial this week saying the Americans are too pessimistic. But I think the pessimism as well, you've got US, China, as I mentioned, you've got Taiwan, you've got Russia and Ukraine, and European support seems to be wavering, American support seems to be wavering, sadly, for Ukraine, and any compromise with Putin, I think, is negative. And then, last but not least, obviously, you've got the Middle East and these proxy wars on behalf of Iran, which I think may metastasize. So you've got quite a lot of things like climate change and everything else.
In spite of the geopolitical uncertainties, the advertising outlook for the 2024 looks better.
Well, it's a very different. People say it's really a tale of two cities. You have a linear world which is crumbling. You have linear TV ad revenues. If you don't have sport like Fox or ESPN, so Disney and Fox, then your ad revenues can be down 10 to 40%. Discovery was down, I think, 14% in Q3. We haven't seen the Q4 numbers. So that's on the one side. And I speak regularly to one of the CEOs of one of the major companies who's on our board I'm on. So I see him every quarter, and I said to him, how do you see this year? This was 2 months ago. And he said, same as last year. So it reminded me of what I saw in the UK many years ago, where print advertising went down 25% 2 years in a row. So half the market basically went in 2 years. And whilst it's not as precipitous as that, it certainly is a issue. So that's on one side. On the other side, the digital platforms continue to prosper. And it's worth running through the numbers because I think people forget the numbers. The world, by the way, advertising agencies love to say the world is becoming much more complicated because they think if they say it's complicated, they're going to be more important to helping clients play. And it's the reverse. Because if you look at the numbers, so media is 950 billion, digital is 650, was last year, around that number. Google, we don't know yet, but we'll probably top out at 225. Meta 125 and Amazon 50. So you're talking about 400 billion out of 650 billion being in the three Western platforms. Then you've got three Eastern ones, Alibaba, Tencent, and ByteDance and TikTok. Orders of magnitude, I mean, TikTok ex-China looks as though it did about 14 billion last year versus 10 billion the year before. So you drop right down. And then you have Twitter going from, or X going from 5 to 2, somewhere around 2. You have Snap supposedly around 5, although they seem to be quite perky at the minute. And we forecast a pretty strong most people yesterday about it. Pinterest at 4. Microsoft probably around 11. Disclosed number, I think, billion. And Apple around 7. So that Walmart is at 3. Retail media we did a session yesterday on retail media, and that's on fire, but from a small base. And Walmart probably the biggest one. So the world has actually got, I think, more simplified, which is totally contrary to what others say, and I think that is going to continue. I mean, AI is going to drive, amongst other things, quantum computing, blockchain, and the much maligned metaverse, which I think is more there than people give it.
What are you most excited about for the year 2024?
Well, you've got to be, looking at CNBC this morning, and Julie Wilson said, this is all about AI. It's a little bit thin. I mean, I shouldn't say this. To me, it's a little bit thin. It's a great conversation starter. CEOs call CMOs or CDOs, Chief Digital Officers or CIOs, and say, tell me about this thing, AI. And there's a stunned silence. They consult
Many agencies have the Chief AI Officer. Many agencies have a new designation for the Chief AI Officer.
The media was voted, I think, in the first time, first award ever, Adweek's AI Agency of the Year, and the first time it's been awarded. So, it's a great conversation starter, and it has huge impact. I mean, if the world is becoming more fragmented geographically, the other thing that's happening is that efficiency is going to become more important. I read an article this morning when I woke up about the last 5 years have been the slowest growth, economic growth, that we've seen globally for many, many years. So, and I think the last 50 years we've been lucky. We don't realize how lucky we've been. We've had basically high growth, low inflation, low interest rates. Now we're going to have lower growth, higher inflation, always coming down, and higher interest rates than we're used to. In that environment, two things, and given the geopolitical stuff, fragmentation becomes really an issue. So North and South America become very important. That sort of power block or time block of North and South America is going to be, in my view, immensely powerful. So we have 3,500 people in 5 Latin American countries, which are hubs, basically. So you buy in reals, or you buy in pesos, or you sell in dollars. And that's going to become more and more important. So North and South America. Middle East, MBS's vision for Saudi Arabia is so huge. And I don't think people really understand, quite apart from the UAE, Qatar, etc. So Middle East, yes. Africa is probably a little bit too fragmented, I think. I mean, I saw a report this morning that sub-Saharan economic growth is going to be amongst the highest of this year, but it's too fragmented. And then you have Asia. And I'll come back to Europe in a second. Asia, I'm going to say ex-China. If you're big in China, if you have one of our clients has 70% of its production coming from 3 JVs in China, you don't want more. If you're Unilever at 7% of your sales in China or Reckitt's at 9%, you probably want more. But beyond that, India, big beneficiary. So India is on steroids, Modi is doing the business from a branding point of view, and will probably continue after the election.
Pretty much all the events of the past year, India has been quite insulated from
Super
the uncertainty.
Super good. And then you've got Indonesia, which will be a top 5 economy by 2050. So 3 of the top 5 economies are going to be Asian. You're going to have China, probably as number 1, US, India, Indonesia, and Germany, or Germany and Indonesia, you believe. So that looks as though the way it is. So 3 out of the 5 will be Asian, therefore they're the Premier League. Coming back to Europe, and then there's other countries in Asia, Indonesia, India, obviously, Vietnam, very important, to a smaller scale, Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore. So the old Asia, Japan and Australia, is still important, but it's the new Asia, really, if I put it that way, that's becoming more so. Europe, every client I speak to, I'm sort of smiling when I say it, because they all say Europe is about cost. So AI and digital transformation becomes super important, not just in the European context, but worldwide, because growth is going to be slower. So the CEOs looking, you see the HPE announcement this morning around Aruba, so 16 billion deal, leveraging the company. You listen to the explanation of it. It sounds good, but it's not. It's a risky transaction, as the market indicated yesterday. But you're seeing companies make those sort of moves. We were talking this morning on our Exco call. One of the interesting things here is the tech companies are wrestling with AI implementation, and they're not finding it easy. They're trying to, sort of move their way through it. So it is quite difficult.
And what other conversations are you picking up at the Consumer Electronics Show? We met briefly just yesterday, and you just arrived. I'm sure you must have met quite a few people in the last 24 hours. So tell me, what are some of the conversations that you're picking up with CXO here?
Well, it's pretty much what I sort of said. I mean, on AI, there are 5 areas. We discussed these yesterday. Visualize, and in order probably try and sort of prioritize them in terms of timing. So the thing that's happening at the moment is visualization of copywriting. That's being, so what took you 3 weeks now takes you 3 hours or whatever. That's a two-edged sword, because clients look at that, and procurement departments look at that and say, you sell time. You're doing less time, so you should rebate some of the cost. And CEOs are saying in that conversation with the CMO or whoever, we need some of that cost. We should become more attuned to outputs rather than, we should sell in places outputs rather than results rather than time. So that's one area, visualization copywriting. The second area where it's taking off, and Month's Flow, which Media Months launched here at CES a day or so ago, covers both these areas. Focus on.
I was getting there. Month's Flow, what exactly will it do?
Yes, it just supercharges the processes around visualization and copywriting, and around personalization, hyper-personalization. So it's sort of what we do for Netflix, where you might produce, I don't know, 1.5 million, in theory, 1.5 million creative assets for a series. You might use only 50 to 70,000, but you could use multiples of that. So that's the 2 areas where we're seeing it already. One thing on the Netflix model that amazes me is it's not sort of intellectually a super sophisticated model, but when you present it, even to the most sophisticated tech companies, there's sort of jaws drop, and there's sort of the penny drops. So I think it is the model. It's a data-driven insight model where you iterate the process. It's not a perfectly honed creative, it's not like a TV commercial that took you 3 months or 6 months of doing something exotic locations. You play with it, you see what the reaction is, and you hone it. And so a virtuous circle. So there's 2 areas. Third area, media planning and buying. Nobody talks about this. But if you look at the meta results for Q3, the Advantage Plus platform they have, which is the media planning and buying platform for small and medium-sized businesses, really took off. And I expect that Q4 will, Meta's revenues in Q3 were up like 25%. And they're going to take off. The platforms, by the way, last year probably grew by 10%. Linear down 10, let's say. So the divergence is the biggest that we've ever seen. actually. Right? And I think the same thing happens again this year, going back to what you're saying. So anyway, media planning and buying, holding companies, watch out. Because your 10,000 to 15,000 people in media networks are going to be redundant. Not everybody, but a large numbers. Because a lot of the processes now are semi-automated or manual. I know from my 5 years ago, but Group M was still very semi-automated and there was a lot of manual stuff going on. That's going to go. The algorithm, for that 650 billion out of 950 in digital, the algorithm will work. And the info that you get from that, the output for human beings, are going to be super good.
So media holding companies, advertising agency holding companies, watch out. And earlier in one of the conversations...
Turkeys don't vote for Christmas. And just quickly, two other things. General efficiency. Okay, so we have this exclusive venture with NVIDIA, with AWS and Adobe, where for outside broadcasting. So typically for outside broadcasting, currently, for a Michigan game, for example, you'd hire a broadcasting truck. That would cost you about $7 to $8 million. You advertise it over 5 years, so it's about $1.5 million a year. The cloud-based solution that NVIDIA, Adobe, and AWS can provide without us doing the integration exclusively costs about 10% of that, 15%. So it's significant cost reduction. That's what you're going to see with the agencies and clients. And then the final area, which I think is the most exciting, is sharing knowledge. And we have 900 people who work on our biggest client, 300 on our second biggest client. If every one of those people know what the other 299 or 899 know, you have a real fighting force. And it's a flattened organization. And what's great about it is it's going to destroy the verticals. Right? It's going to make everything much more shared. Because the people who do the work, not the mucky mucks who run the companies, but the people who do the work love to share experiences. And if you have to do a piece of work by Friday at 5 o'clock, you want to share an experience from Australia or Buenos Aires or whatever. So I think that's really important. So those are the 5 things. And the first 2 are live. Media planning and buying will come, in my view. GMAX at Google, Advantage Plus at Meta will come in the next 2 to 3 years. Agency efficiency is happening. And the knowledge sharing is going to take time. But I think it's a really important area.
So we touched upon the impact of AI on the agency business, but moving forward into this year, how will it impact the elections?
Well, there will be bad actors who will do nasty things. And that brings me to the regulation point. I don't think the regulators have any hope whatsoever of restraining. One prediction will be the big will get bigger. So if you think Alphabet, Meta, Amazon, even in China, Alibaba, Tencent, ByteDance, need restraining, stand by, because they're going to grow. I mean, Apple is 3 trillion. The German, if you equate market cap to GDP, Germany is 3.5 trillion. So these companies are countries. And AI will make the big bigger. I mean, Musk will be a player, but OpenAI is Microsoft. So Microsoft, Apple, stand by. Apple, in my view, I have no inside information whatsoever, but Apple will be extremely big in the AI area. NVIDIA, obviously. Microsoft through OpenAI, Adobe, Oracle, Salesforce. Those, I think, are going to be the key players. And the HPE thing is interesting because it's an attempt to build, as the CEO was talking about on TV this morning, a seamless execution for clients around AI. So, but the regulation has to be self-regulation. Because, the UK CMA, which is the regulatory authority, hired 300 people and hailed this as being, a major, Rishi Sunak held that conference as actually part about regulation. The UK is going to be super good at regulation, not at creating AI, but super good at regulation. It's not going to work. The companies themselves are going to have to exercise restraint. So we are going to have a lot of problems, I think, You saw the hack this morning on the SEC crypto thing. So this is just, a straw in the wind of the sort of things that we're going to see.
So what will be the role of an advertising agency, having said that, in the AI era?
Well, for us, it's really, in a way, it's back to the future, because when we started, and we have very good relationships with the big platforms, we were, I hesitate to use the word, it's a denigrating word to many people, we were resellers for them. We worked very closely with them. And no client really, you wouldn't give your media budget to Rupert Murdoch, nothing against Rupert Murdoch, but you wouldn't give it to say you could put it all into Fox. So you need somebody to check it. So we become blockers and tacklers, if you like, for it, or checkers for it. So we advise clients on how they should do it. So that's sort of one area. The other area, I think, that really is really important, is if you said, what should clients be thinking about? They should be thinking about, obviously, agility. Everybody says they're agile, including ourselves, but when you actually get to it, if the CEOs saw what we see inside their own organizations, they have kids. They would be beside themselves, because they're always in denial of that. So that's one thing. Agility is key, particularly in the environment we're operating. Take back control, which is strange coming from an agency person, because it really implies you have to insource, in-house. We're featured in the Harvard Business case around Sprint and T-Mobile. That was a sort of bellwether media in-housing. That is going to be more and more important. Deprecation of third-party cookies by Google, which is now, we're there. They're already doing it in the Chrome browser. 1%, I think it is, and it's going by the end of the year will be there. And I remember it very clearly because I was actually in Saudi Arabia in January of 2020 when the second blog came out from Google about how they're going to deprecate third-party cookies. And I remember having a conversation with the guy on the phone. It was a good conversation. And then they delayed it because clients just aren't ready. I remember a breakfast, actually it was a brand innovators breakfast at Wimbledon, right? And we had about 6 clients around the table for breakfast. One walked in, I won't say who the companies were, one walked in, somebody I worked with at WPP, who was now a retail company, had 16 million consumers in the UK, first-party data. Perfect. Same platform, working with. There was a woman, I won't say who was a big packaged goods company. She was responsible for the marketing of a major division, no first party data. So clients are not, this is going to be a big wake up. And it's not rocket science.
So what are the questions that clients should be asking their agency in the times, in the AI era, in the cookieless world,
agility,
geopolitical
take-back control, and then first-party data. That, to my mind, is the agenda. And the first-party data thing, even the companies that run their brands very successfully, again, not naming names, but you can guess who it is. I'm thinking of one company that is the best at running multiple brands. Not a holding company, but the client. And the person running that was very much, it was antithetical to combine. You eat what you kill sort of thing, but done brilliantly. Even they are forming a central core, pulling in the first party data, getting insights from it, and deploying the insights internally. I think that's actually the way to do it. Dumping the data on people is not going to get you there. So you have to have a team of people who are looking at the data, come up with it, which are relevant to the brand, and relevant to what you're trying to do. That is going to be hugely important. And coming back to retail for a minute, Walmart and their 3 billion, and Target, and Walgreens, and everybody else, all building their own walled gardens. That's going to be even more important, right? Because they are good sources of first-party data. And all the third-party stuff is going to crumble, right? So all the data companies, and the holding companies have made transactions in this area, who bought third-party data or bought access to third-party data, that's not going to be good anymore. It's the first party stuff, consented by consumers, privacy issues.
How you work with it, that is what matters. Well, we're out of time,
Okay.
Martin, but thank you so much.
Thank
It was
you.
wonderful speaking to you as always.
Thank you very much.